If you think corporations bought free speech before, now that they're human, they'll buy even more. Yeah, their money has free speech, to me quite a shock.
And the Postmaster General for the past 2 years has been dismantling and privatizing piece by piece the Postal Service.
Welcome to Alliance for Democracy's The Populist Dialogues. This cable access program is part of our effort to create a just society based on an equitable, sustainable economy. Our guest today is Jamie Partridge, a retired postal worker and currently an activist with Portland Communities and Postal Workers United. Jamie has a long history of labor activism in the Portland area, including an arrest in October 2013 as a postal protester in the lobby of the main post office in downtown Portland. So welcome to our show, Jamie.
Thank you, David.
And actually welcome back, because you were here a couple of years ago.
Glad to be here.
Right, yeah, and we were talking about the, shall I call it a postal crisis then, and
That's
you're
fair.
still working on that. So you were recently arrested. Talk about that. Why, what was going on?
In October 29th, in the main third floor of the main post office, which is where the management offices are, we were maybe 15 of us attempting to get a meeting with the district manager, which is the highest level manager in the Oregon area, to talk about privatization, that is outsourcing of postal jobs, in particular trucking, mail handling, mail processing that was happening in the Portland area. And we had been refused a meeting a number of times. The union president had asked for meetings, congressional representatives had asked for meetings. Our group, Communities and Postal Workers United, had asked for meetings, and we had been denied, said that they didn't have any obligation to meet with us to talk about these issues, and so we were there in the lobby hoping for a meeting, and instead we got arrested.
Oh, okay.
For trespassing.
For trespassing?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have not come to trial yet, but we hope to call all the managers who were looking through the big glass windows at us on the other side, call them as witnesses and put some, flip the script basically. Put the hard questions to them about why they think it's okay to outsource and privatize good postal jobs and degrade the service.
Okay. Yeah. So talk about why do you think that the post office feels like they need to take these steps?
Because the management of the Postal Service has been captured by agents of the 1%.
Okay.
There's a privatization agenda at the very top. It's not necessary. The Postal Service is not broke. It's the most affordable, most efficient, most effective postal service in the world.
But they say it's going bankrupt,
well, that's a lie.
Attends, yeah. So, what justification do they have for making that contention?
Well, what you see in the mainstream media, and what you'll hear from the Postmaster General and a number of people in Congress, is that the Postal Service is losing billions of dollars every year and is in fact in debt, $15 billion. And what's happening is that Congress mandated that the Postal Service pre-fund retiree health benefits 75 years in advance within a 10-year period. No other agency has to do that. No corporation would do that. But it's saddling the Postal Service with a $5.5 billion payment every year since 2006. 10% of the postal budget is going to pre-fund retiree health benefits for people who aren't even born yet, right? 75 years. But the fact is that the Postal Service is actually, when you look at revenues and expenses, is actually in the black. It's for the past 6 quarters, for the past year and a half, it's been posting a surplus. So there's, what, $1 billion cash on hand. The Postal Service is not broke. In fact, the Postmaster General stopped making these payments, these $5.5 billion a year payments, 3 years ago. He said, well, we've reached our debt limit of $15 billion. We're not going to make these payments. He's breaking the law. Congress isn't doing anything about it. Congress is stuck on stupid. And so there's this cash on hand. There's more revenue than expenses. And yet because of this debt on the books, the powers that be are saying the Postal Service is in a financial emergency, is going broke. And the Postmaster General for the past 2 years has been dismantling and privatizing piece by piece the Postal Service. When I was here 2 years ago, he had announced in fall of 2011 that he was going to close half the mail processing plants, close half the post offices, eliminate Saturday delivery. Well, we've been in this struggle and this fight all that time. We established a national network called Communities and Postal Workers United to defend the Postal Service. And we have coalitions in about 20 different cities. And we've managed to get him to change on closing half the post offices. He's instead reducing the hours on half the post offices, 13,000 post offices, mostly rural, from 8 to 6 to 4, sometimes to 2 hours a day, which actually eliminates the postmaster position, the full-time postmaster position in a lot of these small towns, and of course the hours are reduced to 10 to 2 or 11 to 1, and working people can't make it, so these post offices are basically falling into unused.
So there'll be even more justification for
closing eventually, right? And then in those 2 years, we've pushed back, but the Postmaster General has closed half the mail processing plants, which has led to delay of mail, the loss of 100,000 jobs. There've actually been a third of postal jobs have been eliminated in the last 10 years since this 2006 mandate to pre-fund retiree health benefits. So a couple 100,000 jobs have been eliminated.
So I assume that these are union jobs.
Yes. The Postal Service is the largest unionized employer in the country. And so part of this agenda of the 1% to dismantle and privatize the Postal Service is to knock out this unionized workforce, which not only provides good living wage and benefited jobs for hundreds of thousands of people all over the country, but in particularly in marginalized communities. 21% of postal workers are African American, 25% of postal workers are veterans, 40% of postal workers are people of color, 40% are women. So as the workforce has been shrunk, as these plants are being closed, as these post offices are having their hours reduced, those communities are most impacted, loss of good living wage jobs, plus the people who most depend on the Postal Service, seniors, the disabled, particularly disabled vets, people in rural communities, people who do not have access to the internet, which tends to be low income, are hit the hardest. We've been able to save Saturday delivery so far. We've done some major mobilizations in the streets a number of times. We've been able to postpone. There's another wave of closures of mail processing plants, which were on the docket in January of this year. And we got those postponed, but just last week the Postmaster General announced that in January of next year, they're going to close another 82 mail processing plants, which is another quarter to a third of the mail processing.
And how has that affected us in Oregon?
Well, in Oregon, they closed the Salem mail processing plant, which means that if you want to mail a letter from one part of Salem to the other part of Salem, it has to come all the way to Portland to be processed and then all the way back to Salem to be delivered, so that the mail ends up getting delayed a day. It used to be, you can put a first-class letter in the mail one day and it'd be delivered in the same town the next day. It's not happening in Salem. It's not happening in the area, in the 973 zip code area, which is around the Salem area from the Cascades to the coast. Yeah, and Netflix has a plant there in Salem, and people may have noticed that the Netflix turnaround has changed. The service standards have changed, and in this announcement of last week, the Postmaster General putting these other additional plants on the chopping block. Those will include Springfield, Eugene mail processing plant, Bend, Pendleton. So the only mail processing plants will be in Portland for the whole state, except for one in Medford. So that from, you know, Lane County, from the Cascade, you know, from the coast to coast, all the mail will come to Portland to be processed and then go out to the state again. So mail will be delayed 2-3 days, which has a, you know, huge impact on people's ability to pay their bills on time, and you know, for businesses to get you know, supplies out and product in. And
yeah. And so when you do those kind of delays, you really discourage people from using your service.
Of course.
Right. So that snowballs the effects, and it continues. It's kind of like TriMet, our public transit system, increasing rates when ridership goes down, and then of course ridership continues going down,
yes.
Which then becomes justification for cutting service further.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a very good business model.
It's not a good business model.
Yeah.
And you say that it's all based on the justification that Congress has put this very unique requirement that they fund these pension benefits for 75 years going forward.
Right. Now also the narrative that's out there is that the internet is making the post office go away. That first class mail is a thing of the past. That people use email, fax, and electronic funds transfer. And while that's true, and in fact during the Great Recession, first class mail fell by a total after over 5 years of 25%. The amount of the first class mail volume has leveled out, and in fact standard mail, which is what we call, some people call junk mail, we call standard mail or bulk business mail, advertising mail, is increasing, and package delivery is just booming. I mean, every year for the past few years, package delivery has increased by over 10% because internet shopping produces packages for the Postal Service to deliver. And in fact, FedEx and UPS for the past 5 years have been using the Postal Service to deliver in neighborhoods that they don't want to deliver, like low-income neighborhoods where it's not as profitable for them, or rural areas. So that, for example, in my post office, which is in inner northeast Portland, every day a FedEx truck and a UPS truck comes in and drops off packages for letter carriers to deliver. So the Postal Service is doing well, except for our leadership. And we've been trying to push back, but so far we've been less than successful in our efforts to stop this march.
Okay. Talk for a minute about the trucking companies that carry the mail.
Well, the over-the-road trucking between cities has been privatized for a while, but within the city, trucking has been by union postal workers between the plants and the post offices. But about a year ago, the Postal Service decided to privatize, to contract out the trucking between the 3 plants in Portland, 1 downtown, 2 at the airport, the mail processing plants. And they contracted with a bankrupt fly-by-night, a no-bid contract with a company that didn't have enough trucks, didn't have their own trailers, and they were paying, and they ended up, it's a company that owed the Postal Service $300,000 from previous contracts with over-the-road trucking where they had used a federal credit card to avoid paying gas tax and never paid off the credit card. So there's this, why would the Postal Service contract with this company? Well, we don't have direct evidence, but hearsay is that there's a relationship between the postal manager and the CEO of this trucking company. And in fact, what has happened in this year is that there were 14 trips going back and forth, which were when the postal workers were driving the trucks. They were increased with this private trucking company to 21, and then to 28, and then to 32, then to 38 trips a day. And what we found out from checking in with postal workers was that these trucks were going back and forth empty.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And getting paid for it. You know, getting paid $59 an hour, which is certainly more than what postal workers are getting paid. So there's this padded, corrupt, fraudulent, wasteful contract. And we in the past year, we've been doing all kinds of things to try to expose this. We haven't been very successful in getting into the major media. We've blocked some of these trucks. We've, again, we had that action down at the main post office. We've also, what else? Well, we've been doing petitioning and tried to, and we had, you know, thousands of signatures to present. We actually, after being unable to present to the district manager at his office, we went to his home and presented it at his home, which he wasn't very happy about. But no,
right.
We're trying to do what we're trying to do. And we actually have heard, we haven't seen it in writing, but we've heard that the Postal Service is deciding to back off from this private contract. And we think it would be a great victory and a testimony to citizen action and to, you know, direct action, even when the rules say that we don't have a right to intervene. I mean, but we believe it's the People's Postal Service. It's mandated in the Constitution, and
it's one of the few things that is mandated is that the government will provide.
Yeah,
right.
And in fact, when they close a post office or close a mail processing plant, they're required by law to hold a community meeting that will take into consideration the impact, you know, in jobs and service on the community. What we found, especially with these rural post offices where they were threatening closure, is people organized. People, you know, half the community would come to these community meetings called by the Postal Service, and when that's happened, you know, the Postal Service, you know, the squeaky wheel will get the grease, and the Postal Service will back off for a time. For a time,
right?
Until they think people are
Right.
demobilized or not paying attention, right?
Right.
And actually, we've had some very successful actions. For example, not in Oregon, but in Berkeley, California. I don't know if you've heard about this, but they tried to sell the Berkeley post office about a year ago, put it up for sale. They're doing this all over the country too. This is another piece that's happening, selling these historic post offices, you know, some of them dating back to the, you know, 100 years or, you know, New Deal days. They're, you know, with the big columns and these WPA murals inside. Well, this is Berkeley Post Office is one of these. And the whole town just got up in arms, and they had an encampment. They had a tent city on the steps of the Berkeley Post Office for a month. The city council just recently voted to change the zoning around this post office so that it couldn't be used for commercial purposes. So they're basically trying to discourage the sale, and it's still open and it's still for sale. I mean, it's still for sale, but it's not been sold. So there's other kinds of actions that we've been doing also to just try to keep these mail processing plants open. I say we lost the Salem plant. Just prior to losing it, we had an occupation of the plant where a number of people were arrested. And back last December, we had an occupation of the Springfield mail processing plant, which was on the chopping block, and it was after a moment later that they took all of those remaining plants off the chopping block. So we kind of think that maybe we made a difference. We got on the Ed show, the MSNBC Ed show.
So you did actually get some press.
On
not Main Street press.
That occupation of the Springfield mail processing plant.
Okay. So talk about Staples.
Sure. I haven't had a chance to talk about Staples. The latest privatization scheme to put post offices inside of Staples office supply stores, which is the biggest office supply chain in the country. In November, the Postal Service made a deal to set up 82 pilot post offices inside of Staples stores run by, you know, poorly trained, unaccountable, high turnover Staples workers that are paid minimum wage. At the same time that they're reducing hours and closing community post offices that are run by, you know, highly trained, sworn, uniformed, well-paid postal workers. And in fact, in San Francisco, they've opened up these 82 pilot projects in San Francisco, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and Western Massachusetts. And in San Francisco, where they opened up 19 of these post offices inside of Staples stores, they reduced hours in 21 community post offices and put notices on the door. You know, if you want after hours postal service, go to the Staples down the street, which is open till 9 o'clock, which is open on Sundays. You know, so they're basically trying to, the Postal Service line is that, we're just trying to expand service for the public. Well, if they wanted to do that, they could expand the hours in community post offices.
Right.
Which of course we want them to do. You know, we want post offices to be open. There should be one in a major city that's open 24 hours. We should have post offices open on Sundays. In any case, it's very clear what the plan is to eliminate. I mean, in fact, we through going to court, the American Postal Workers Union got a hold of documents where the Postal Service plans are made clear that they want to eliminate retail. They want to eliminate community post offices. They want it all to go inside of first Staples, then Office Supply, Office Depot, Office Max, probably Walmart. You know.
Yeah. Right.
Which, you know, Staples is closing. They just announced they're closing 225 of their 1,600. They have 1,600 stores across the country, and if they are successful in this attempt to privatize in these 82 post offices, if they're successful, and that is if we don't stop them, they're going to roll them out to all 1,600 Staples stores, and then they're going to go beyond that.
So the main thing with Staples is that they have low-wage workers who aren't sworn, and what would a standard postal worker working for the post office be sworn to do?
Sworn to protect the sanctity of the mail. And what's happening inside Staples stores is that we found out that they actually have the mail is put in unsecured bins, and the Staples worker goes off around the store doing other things, you know, until somebody comes to the post office. Well, the potential for mail theft is huge there, and I mean, and not just from low-wage workers who are desperate, you know, but customers or anybody that's in the Staples store. So we're trying to discourage people from shopping at Staples. We've got a boycott Staples in place, and in fact, there's a lot of support being generated at this point for a Staples boycott. We've got the AFL-CIO is on board, the Service Employees International Union, the National Education Association, which is the largest teachers union, and the American Federation of Teachers just this weekend, the second largest teachers union, got on board with the Staples boycott, which is big because teachers buy a lot of school supplies at, in fact, Staples, 1/3 of their business is school supplies. And they have special programs to bring teachers in and all this. So we think that Staples is going to be hurting during the back to school, you know, big buy of school supplies, and that in fact by September, which is when this decision is going to be made between the Staples and the Postal Service about whether to go forward, that we'll actually win this one. And then that'll be big because it'll mean that, you know, that we can actually push back and win on some of these in a big way on a nationwide basis, and give some confidence to those postal workers and community folks that are struggling to save the People's Postal Service. And in fact, another new gift has been given to us just recently with a proposal for postal banking, which has come out of, amazingly enough, the Office of the Inspector General of the Postal Service put forward a report at the beginning of the year that said that, well, 38% of zip codes have no banks, but there are post offices. And we used to have postal banking between 1911 and 1967, and people had small deposit savings accounts. We should bring it back. We should bring back we should have check cashing and small loans and money transfers. I mean, we already have money orders at the Postal Service. That's a vestige of when we had postal banking back in the 20th century. And there's all these people that are unbanked, in particular, I mean, rural areas, but also in the inner city where they're, you know, these predatory loan, payday loans and check cashing outfits are just ripping people off these big fees. And this would provide a service and would bring in some revenue. And Senator Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are jumping on board. So we we have some hope for not only saving the Postal Service, but expanding services. So,
okay, great,
postal banking.
good, good. So real quickly,
Yes.
how do people get involved with the Staples boycott?
Okay. We have an action coming up on the 26th of July, which is Postal Heritage Day. It's the 239th birthday of the post office. It's going to be at noon on Saturday the 26th at the main post office downtown, Northwest Hoyt and Broadway. And our local email is cpwunited, cpwunited1@gmail.com. They can get a hold of us that way. And then our website is cpwunited cpwunited.com.
I'll put it on the screen.
Yes,
Yeah.
cpwunited.com.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
All right, good.
All right.
Good. Our guest today has been Jamie Partridge, a retired postal worker and an activist with Portland Communities and Postal Workers United, fighting for no closures, no cuts, and no delay of the mail. So for more information on this issue and the organization, go to cpwunited.com. Don't forget that you can watch Populist Dialogues on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/PopulistDialogues to view most of our past shows. And when you're there, click the subscribe button so that when a new program is uploaded, like this one, you will automatically receive an email notification. Populist Dialogues is a project of the Portland Alliance for Democracy. Learn more about us at afd-pdx.org and about our national organization at thealliancefordemocracy.org. Thank you to Roger Bates, Joan Horton, Melissa Hayes, Brad Leach, Janet Morris, and Tom Thomas for their volunteer time getting us on the air. And thank you to all of you for watching. I hope that you'll watch us again next week. No, actually, I hope that you'll watch us again in 2 weeks. Right. Bye.
If you think corporations bought free speech before, now that they're human, they'll buy even more. Yeah, their money has free speech, to me quite a shock. 'Cause I never heard my money talk. When a corporation has a colonoscopy, then I'll believe they're human like me.